Hi, I'm Jacob Suggs and welcome back to another video. Now, when you think of cartoons and growing up with the shows that you love that were animated, you can think of a ton of different networks that probably aired said shows. But I think that there's one network that we can all kind of go back to and talk about when talking about the cartoons that we love, and that's Cartoon Network. It's in the name. I mean, it's in the name, Cartoon Network. It's the network for, it makes sense. And I know that the networks kind of had some rough patches here and there, but ultimately, I have to admit it, they're in a renaissance for their cartoons at the moment. You have adults watching the shows and kids watching a show, so that's kind of a double win. Now, I grew up watching Cartoon Network with my dad and with my parents and just on my own. It's one of the networks I have really fond memories of, like, certain shows with as a kid growing up. And for the most part, I grew up watching all the shows that you guys all know and love, kind of like Johnny Bravo, Courage the Cowardly Dog, and many, many more. But it wasn't until high school, I cannot believe that I'm about to say this, it wasn't until high school that I discovered probably my favorite cartoon and animated work I've ever seen in my life, Samurai Jack. Growing up, I wasn't allowed to watch Samurai Jack only because the violent content on the show just probably wasn't something my parents wanted me to watch. But as I got older and when I was about a sophomore in high school, I stumbled upon it on Netflix and I'm like, hey, I remember that show always looked cool, but I could never watch it. But since I'm older now, well, I'll go give it a watch. And I'm so glad that I did, because I've got to say, this is one of the best shows I've ever seen. And Samurai Jack, there's so many things about it that make the show unique. Now, the show revolves around a samurai who's cast into a dark future by a coup, this demon that kind of reigns over Jack's village. And then Jack is forced to escape this future that he's kind of like cast into by a coup, and he has to find his way back home to the village that he loves and wants to save. So every episode just takes place in a different area and his adventure and journey to try to find his way back home to, save the people that he loves and cares about. Now, before you ask, yes, I am aware that Adult Swim is bringing back the show for 10 new episodes in Season 5. I watched the premiere the other night and thought it was awesome, but I also like how they're like, well, now they have more restraints because it's Adult Swim and you can show blood and stuff, and there is blood, but they're not overdoing it to where it doesn't feel like Samurai Jack anymore, if you get what I'm saying. Even the creator, Gennady Tartakovsky, was like, yeah, I don't want to push this show too far. Kids are still going to be able to watch the show, but it's just going to have kind of like mature, more mature, tones. And the show does. What I can tell you what I already liked about the premiere is how the intro, normally the intro for the old show would be from a Q's perspective saying how he cast Jack into the future. But because the show's darker and stuff, this season now the intro is from Jack's perspective and the sadness and sorrow that comes with that story. And I thought that was a really unique and interesting spin that they put on the show, and frankly, as at the time of this video, only one episode's come out, so I can't say much more about it. But overall, I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with the show, but that's not what this video is about. This video is more about, why is Samurai Jack special to me and so many people? What makes it stand out in the midst of other cartoons that were on the network at the time? What makes it so great? Isn't it just like every other animated show on the network? No, it's not. In my opinion, I think it's because it breaks the traditional quote-unquote kids show mold, and instead first and foremost revolves around the unique and imaginative storytelling aspect of making a show, rather than just cartoon action nonsense left and right. And I'm not saying that that format doesn't always work. If it wasn't successful, then we wouldn't have shows like that airing on the network to this day. But I think this show is unique because it managed to twist and break the mold that we're used to and drew kids into a different aspect of visual storytelling rather than just mindless cartoons. And don't get me wrong, the action in Samurai Jack is pretty phenomenal and it's really entertaining when it happens. And whenever a few jokes are tossed into the mix here and there, they do work for the most part. Especially with characters like the Scotsman and stuff like that, that's great. But when you look at the show for what it is, even if you haven't seen it, if you look at a few frames, I don't think that's what pops in your mind first and foremost. People remember the show for being awesome and fun, but not just because of the action, but because of how well the art goes with the storytelling aspect of it. Ultimately, Jack doesn't speak much throughout the entire show. In fact, in all 4 seasons, he only says 114 lines of dialogue. See, a picture's worth 1,000 words, and I think that Samurai Jack showcases this perfectly. The animation's uniquely styled and it stands out, However, the style of the animation contrasts pretty well with the hand-drawn and painted backgrounds that made the show kind of iconic. Ultimately, the backdrops help the show's unique art style stand out even more and pop more visually and create visually interesting stuff, which help move along the story. When you watch an episode of Samurai Jack, you're invited into different worlds ranging from westerns to the future to even battling futuristic robots with Spartan warriors. I'm not joking, that's an episode in the show. Fact of the matter is though, is that each new environment feels special and fresh and exciting. But I think one of the most powerful moments in the entire series is when we enter back into an environment that we've already seen, not one that we're being introduced into. Jack's old village, the one that he's desperately trying to get back to and save, trapped in Aku's dark future. Jack has seen the various wacky, dark, bizarre places in this world, but when he sees the rubble of where he desires to return, it's extremely powerful. He's hit with a series of flashbacks and sheds a single tear before moving on, but once again, this moment contains no words. The lack of dialogue in his speech and in the character and in the show in general just speaks volumes for when those moments hit. I can't wait to see where they bring the show because I feel like action speaks so much more than words, and I can't wait to see how the torment and pain that's grown over this time is going to affect our protagonist. Long story short, a picture's worth 1,000 words, and sometimes we don't need those words to help tell a story. The magic of both TV and cinema and movies today is the act of visual storytelling and how a director can interpret certain things and bring certain visuals to life and tell stories on a screen. And if there's ever an animated show that's contrasted well and brought in aspects of old and new animation and art in general and storytelling and just classic motifs and stuff that we all grow up wanting and yearning, it's Samurai Jack. But I think that the art and the story go hand in hand very, very well, and in the end, that's what makes it one of my favorite shows. So, are you guys watching Samurai Jack's new season? Let me know down in the comments below. What do you guys think of Samurai Jack in general, too? I'd love to hear your thoughts. And as always, I'm Frame by Frame. Remember the name, and I'll see you in the next Frame by Frame film review.